Hello and welcome to the Chess Pit, where normally three guys, but today it's going to be two. We're talking about the World Chess Championship. My name is Phil Makepeace. I'm joined, not necessarily as always, but most of the time, recently, certainly, by Mr. Robin Sarfas. Robin, how are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. We're a couple of minutes early for my proposed stream time of 4:49. So I'm a bit disappointed about that, but otherwise, just about managing.
Okay, so we're going to have a little chat about Game 10, which was the least eventful so far, I think we can reasonably say. First thought, I mean, like when you were watching it, did you just think Petrov, that's what Nepo's going for? Did you think he was maybe trying to catch Magnus out in some new prep that sort of going down the line that they played earlier in the tournament, earlier in the match?
No, I think Nepo's going through the motions at this stage. I think if if he were behind in the game but was needed to win, I would expect him more likely to actually deviate openings. But I think in this situation, we've mentioned this a few times, John and I, when you were away. But it's a big part of it's about belief, and surely the belief is not there from Nepo or his team anymore that he can expect to win this match. So if he's done a lot of prep in the Petrov and he feels like he can get quick draws out of it, it brings him one step closer to going home, which I think is probably what he wants.
Yeah, and at this rate, he's going to be getting his wish on, I believe, Saturday. That would, if they halve out from here, then Game 12 would be the last one, wouldn't it? I mean, it seemed that Magnus, by playing something slightly different, he played knight d3 instead of knight f3, which is what happened in the Caruana match, I believe. They had one game in that line. It just seemed that Magnus maybe, was just sort of, okay, well, let's do something a little different. I mean, that it created I think an interesting position. If the queens hadn't come off, if Carlsen had played bishop e3, for example, to block the queen exchange, then we might have got something happening. But
I've seen that move, and it creates a potentially more double-edged position, right? Like there's an opportunity, I suppose, there for Jan to perhaps sort of further down the line, castle queen side, and obviously it's better for White in that situation. But I think that Magnus probably I think he's still approaching games with the same strategy he would have approached them previously. We were saying this yesterday as well, right? That his great skill is he's sort of unperturbed by what's going on in sort of the wider context. And I think so his preparation will have been to vary his openings, I think, quite a lot throughout the match, but in sort of subtle ways, right? So he's played, just a slightly different lines in this Petrov every time he's played e4, and he's, just sort of shaking things up, sort of like an appropriate degree. But at the same time, there's no need for him to take those risks as well at this point, and so I don't think against a player like Jan, there's no, I think he's giving himself better sort of overall chances by just playing solidly, and we've seen that borne out so far. And he's only one win away now. So
and also, I mean, we've after yesterday's, well, I mean, what he called a disaster. I don't think it was necessarily that surprising that Nepo came out almost trying to just have a quick draw, just to resettle. He's got the rest day tomorrow, and then he needs to win 3 of the final 4. Does that presumably means that on Friday for game 11, where Nepo is going to be White, he's going to really go for it? And talking of making things double-edged, we've got Cal in the chat here saying, what are the chances of Nepo breaking out an early f4 on move 1 or 2? So that would be 1 f4, the birds, or 2 f4, presumably the king's gambit. Any chance of something like that, do you think? Or he's going to be more, trying to build slowly, try and basically do what he did in the first half of the match?
I expect him to probably stick to his prep, because that's what we've seen in the game today, right, with his Petrov and stuff. I don't believe that Nepo is necessarily sort of looking at the match situation thinking, well, I've got to win tomorrow if I've got any chance, right? Because as we said, I don't think he really believes there's much realistic chance. So I think it's kind of neither here nor there. I think it would obviously be if he was only one game behind, or even perhaps 2 still, but both of those 2 losses had been hard fought and close, and it was felt like Nepo was still had chances. But I think that given the match situation. I don't think it matters that much, to be honest, at this stage. Which is not probably the best thing to say on a podcast where we specifically are supposed to talk about this, but
well, it's so inevitable now, isn't it? That it kind of, I almost hope Magnus wins.
Yeah,
tomorrow, not tomorrow, on Friday, just so that we can just forget it.
I think it's more important, to be honest, more relevant to discuss what Magnus will be thinking going into the game. Do you have into the next game, right? Because I've mentioned there that he's going to sort of stick to his prep in a general sense, but obviously that involved attempting to win with the white pieces. What do you think we'll see from him on Friday? Do you think he's going to be trying to make this as clinical as possible?
I can't see him adopting a different approach at all. I think that there's no need. Clearly, things have worked so far, and he knows he's really close. That might come into it. Then, if we get a moment on Friday, given he only needs to win to win the match, because obviously the precedent here is Game 12 of 2018, right, where he didn't go for it against Caruana because he thought he could go into the rapid play tiebreaks. We might see something similar there, where Magnus has a chance to play for a win or go down a line which looks good but is slightly dodgy, and he might. That would. I mean, I'd be impressed if he did in that scenario. But equally, given this situation, I mean, I talked yesterday about Jean van der Velde, who famously lost the Open. He was 3 shots clear in the 1999 British Open and managed to blow it and went into a playoff and then lost to Paul Lawrie.
I don't even know what sport you're talking about.
So. That's golf, sir.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of golf. Nah. I think
that's type of VW, right? It's a car, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like racing.
Yeah, it's just the letter G in phonetic alphabet. That's all it is. Right, yeah, okay. It doesn't actually mean anything. Okay. It's just flog backwards.
So this guy was like a race car driver then?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He got out his tires and blew 3 shots on the final hole. I think Magnus will just try and keep everything as much under his wing as possible without really taking too many risks, which is a shame. But we're at that point where he just halves out Friday and Saturday and we're there. But I think that his approach generally just, why shouldn't it? Why should it change? I mean, he's the one who's 3 clear. Clearly everything is gone well so far. It's all on Nepo to make things happen, but that might let Magnus in as well. I really wouldn't be surprised if Magnus wins on Friday.
People are talking about the fact that Magnus is so sort of he wants to get everything out of every position, and he will sort of challenge himself to always do things in the most kind of accurate and clinical fashion. So, for example, there was this knight takes G3 move the other during the latter stages of Game 9, where Magnus was clearly ahead, and he was just rerouting his knight over to the queen side so it could help out in sort of like rounding up this passed pawn. And he calculates. Many players I think would have, because there was a safe technical win regardless, would have just carried on, just moved the knight onto E4 and said, okay, well I've sort of secured my position here with this D4 in fact. But he calculated. But he took the time out, regardless of the fact that he was, pretty low on time to calculate this capture. And it's obviously the best move if you can just take an extra pawn, and he does it. And I think that may, I think certainly if he's in the position on Friday where he feels like he can do that, he won't shy away from it because he feels, well, there's no point. I can just draw tomorrow, right? Which is the same sort of mindset, right? I think that if he will take every decision based on its merits rather than based on the match play situation. Can I win this game? Perhaps. Well, he'll try. I think. I also think it probably, in a practical sense, makes a difference because there's no rest day the next day. If he was playing on Friday, right, and then if he wins, he gets to sort of, it's done and dusted, or he has to wait around for sort of a couple more days. I mean, I don't know how much he's enjoying the delights of the Dubai Expo 2020, But yeah, so I think he'll just go. His mindset will just be go out and try and win, and if I don't win, well, I'll try and win again the next day, and then the next match I play, and the next match after that. In my career, I will just try and win them all too, and he's perfectly capable of that. So,
yeah, I think that's pretty much what's going to happen, isn't it? I mean, we've just in terms of our preview of 11, 12, we're probably not going to get a 13. Then I think that's reasonable. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the press conferences, because they have been the press conferences themselves, or the way they've been conducted, have been talked about more than the actual things that the players have been saying in the press conferences, which is clearly not correct. And today it just seemed to jump the shark entirely, where Maurice Ashley asked Nepo, is your strategy still to win the match? And Nepo just looked at him, and I mean, it looked like he wanted to thump him. It was just a terrible question. And there've been terrible questions, and the approach to press conferences in general, something's got to change, right, for the future matches, because this doesn't work. I think the candidates had a really good way of doing it, where it was just their post-mortem was talked about a lot with, it was Anastasia Karlovic. They just have a chat with her, and then that was it. I don't think you need these press conferences after every game, because how much? I think part of it is just they've just run out of things to talk about, right? And that's why you're getting these questions from Twitter and all of this nonsense.
Yeah, I think that my thoughts are this, I guess, about this sort of specific issue of these press conferences is that, like, there are going to be things that it might be interesting to know about players, right? What their approach was to a given game, right? And those are generally going to be consistent across every single game, right? So those should just be asked after every game, right? Like, what was your approach, And then there should be questions about the specifics of the content of the game itself. What were you thinking when you played this move? What was your strategy here? What were you expecting this? Do you deviate from your prep at this point? Et cetera, things like that. Focusing. But then questions about, they're like, he's just trying. I mean, I kind of understand where Maurice Ashley is coming from, to be honest, in the sense that, like, it is understandable to question, it's not necessarily that his strategy is not to win the game, right? But, like, I think at this point, Nepo might well just be sort of thinking, like, well, I'll just half out until I get to the end, right? Just try and staunch the bleeding a little bit and stuff like that, rather than. But it is a. But obviously the manner of asking that question at it's just pointless, right? Like, it's just bizarre. Ashley's he's run afoul of Magnus for asking what was deemed to be a not relevant question before. Actually, there's a funny video on YouTube. You'll have to tweet it out, Phil, of Maurice getting laid into by Magnus. But I think more generally, it's just weird. Like, the standard of people who are asking these questions, like it just seems bizarre. Like, the questions oftentimes seems to be people who don't really understand chess, or are sort of willfully not, like, against their sort of better judgment doing it, because I can't just in good faith, like, understand, like, see how in good faith some of these questions could be answered. I'm on a bit of a rant here, but the example of the guy asking Magnus about his knight yesterday, right? If you looked at the position on the board, right, it's clearly that Magnus wasn't in his wildest dreams considering some sort of, like, move with that knight on f6, right?
So should we explain what happened there? So Magnus is seen to be touching his knight, and then basically sort of does like a hand move, and this is go, well, that's a just, and it's clear that the arbiters have heard it. Nepo isn't at the board at this point, and then there's all this stuff on the commentary and go, oh wow,
Lawrence
did Magnus
Trent,
touch?
Of course.
Yeah, did Magnus touch the knight and then move a pawn? Do we have a touch move scandal? Well, no, obviously we don't. I mean, and you're right as well. It's a thing of, even if he did, which he kind of did, you're right. I mean, it doesn't matter, because obviously he's never going to move that knight anyway.
And it was stupid, because obviously the suggestion, like, what it struck me as was Magnus was thinking about what his next move was going to be, and then he went to adjust the piece and he kind of forgot he was adjusting, because he lingered on the knight for quite a long time, right? That's where this has come from, right? If he had just reached out and just adjusted he lingered up, but clearly he was just in his calculations, and he was thinking about his move, and then he realized, oh, I'm still touching this knight, I'm just gonna, but there was no. But the problem is not just the fact that it was sort of this suggestion, right? It's the manner in which this journalist asked him this question. It's like, well, we saw you touch a knight and then not touch the knight and stuff. Can you explain what's gone on there? And it's like, well, the guy obviously has explained what's gone on. He touched the knight and then he took his hand off it, right? Like, he clearly knows what's happening there. So, but he's not coming out and saying, like, oh, Magnus, like, it looked like you violated the touch move. Like, he's just sort of making this, like, cowardly implication without actually coming out there and saying, I think you did anything wrong. Can you? And it's just like, I just found it completely it was just, I don't. I'm speechless. How just,
you cannot speak.
Yeah,
rugby league commentary. Yeah,
and Magnus dismissed it very, sort. I thought he eloquently and gave it as much, if not more, attention than it deserved. To be honest, it was,
it was a Norwegian journalist as well.
Yeah,
which so they're obviously looking for a scandal in their own house.
Yeah, and I think chess has this wider problem at the moment that it's kind of, it's obviously there's been periods in time when chess has been more or less in the public eye, right? And it's certainly like a reasonably big deal, right? You know, the top prize for the World Championship is millions, and you know the top elite players live, do very well from chess. It's clearly very serious, right? But at the same time, it's sort of been in the last couple of years really sort of more become part of the kind of mainstream gaze, right? And it's kind of feeling its way into doing that. It doesn't have like necessarily a sort of mainstream kind of history of its sort of traditions to kind of fall back on that people are going to be familiar with, right? So like the comparison people often make to talking about a classical chess match is like to test match special, right? But test match special has been sort of has been in such a style for such a long time, right? That it has its, and when it goes on sort of inane tangential stuff, it's done in a way which is very much seen as it's part of the tradition of the sport, right? As you obviously very well know, being like the biggest cricket fan on the planet. Whereas chess doesn't really have that, and so like the Andrea Botez knight question, right, is in itself like completely harmless. I didn't really care about that. It's just a sort of an inane thing, right? But it's just sort of kind of something to talk about, right? When you're actually talking about, you've got so much time to talk about this thing, and actually not much is happening for a long time. And I think that there needs to be a better way of actually just translating chess to an audience, that a mainstream audience, rather than just being like silly, just trying to like create drama from nowhere, or just like these sort of like weird memes that Andrea Botez is asking about how the knight moves, right? And chess, I think, certainly has to find its feet in that regard.
And I think the people who do that best within the chess world are Gustafsson and Svidler, and they're both obviously involved in the preparation for Carlsen there. So it's that's a different job for them this time. But I think we are missing their commentary, certainly. Okay, I'm going to wrap. Yeah, go on.
No, I do think so. I think it's having the right personnel. Like, what I hope is that more people emerge who can do so, because there are obviously fantastic chess broadcasters. Like Maurice Ashley, to be honest, is normally very good. He is prone to the occasional like gaff, and I partly think it's not necessarily putting people in a position to succeed as well, right? If everyone's asking this in the inane questions, it's hard for kind of Maurice not to do that. But if you put the right people there, it might be an interesting conversation, because as you said, they've had press conferences in the past which have worked very well. And it's fascinating when you get a player talking, like someone like Vasily Ivanchuk talking about their games in a post-match situation. It's absolutely, it's like more entertaining than the game sometimes. So it can be done right, but I think it's chess on a pretty steep learning curve in a number of ways, in terms of broadcasting, in terms of human rights abuses in host countries.
Yes, I think we could do much better. Right, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you, Robin, for joining me today. I think that tomorrow we've got a slightly different offering, where I think we're going to have more of an ensemble for the rest day, with a few different people joining our broadcast. But for now, that is game 10. Magnus is still 3 games ahead. There are 4 left. Nepo, we will see what happens on Friday with game 11. But until then, thank you to Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you from me, and goodbye.